I'm very cautious overreacting to columns and moments. And there was a column out today in USA Today, which I thought was actually kind of interesting because I did at least spend a moment thinking about if it was anybody else. But Travis Kelce bumped into Andy Reid, and he was yelling at him as in the first quarter when they had the fumble. And I saw there's a guy named Jarrett Bell. Now, Jarrett's covered the NFL for a long time. He's been a columnist for a long time. And he writes for USA Today. And USA Today was, there was a time when it was probably the biggest newspaper that like everyone got, especially if you stayed at a hotel. You'd have a USA Today at your door. Sometimes when you went downstairs. I remember there was a front page spread on me when I was at ESPN very early on in my career. And I was working with Tom Brennan, the former Vermont coach at the time, and he's like, Sporto! Every male, red-blooded male American staying at a Holiday Inn's taking a dump reading about you right now, right? And I was like, that is really appropriate. That's true. That's when I read my USA Today as well. But Jarrett Bell wrote this, and I thought it was interesting. He said, imagine what the reaction would have been if Terrell Owens had screamed in the face and bumped his coach during the heat of the moment tantrum in the middle of the Super Bowl, or Antonio Brown, or A.J. Brown, or Tyreek Hill. I'm guessing the reaction would have been much different if a high-profile, supercharged, competitive black player unloaded on his coach with the same tacky irreverence that Travis Kelce demonstrated with his blow-up on Andy Reid in Super Bowl 58. Instead, after the Kansas City Chiefs claimed their back-to-back Super Bowl crowns, Kelce pretty much laughed off the incident. Andy Reid squashed the whole thing. Okay, so he's saying, like, look, if it was anybody of color and they do the exact same thing, it would have been a much bigger thing. And I think we do this one thing time and again, which supersedes color, and yet we diminish it completely from arguments. Do you know what that is? Well, we don't take context into account. And when I say context, I'm not talking just about the fact that Travis Kelce appeared to be yelling, keep me in the game. I'm talking about the fact that Travis Kelce is 34 years old. 34 years old. And the controversies around Kelce are early in his career, he did I forget what it was called, Catching Kelce or Chasing Kelce. He did a reality show where he dated like 32 women on his show. That was one. The other two controversies would probably be this year where he did the vaccine commercial, Two Things at Once, and dating Taylor Swift. There have been no outbursts that we know of. Yes, he's well compensated. I don't remember any, putting his feet in the sand and drawing a line and saying, I need to be paid X or else. Does anybody remember any of that? There have been essentially no real issues. And I bring it up because I grew really frustrated with, there's a dance that everyone's doing, and it's not about shooting guns, but Ja did it, and there were a couple people that are like, dude, you can't be doing that. And then you'll have others troll them on social media like, oh, well, if Ja did this. The difference is Ja Morant was twice suspended by the NBA for what he's done with guns. And then, oh, yeah, by the way, there's a civil case that was against him because his boys kicked the crap out of a 17-year-old kid who was playing pickup ball at his house. Right? So the point is that the context of who he is, like, yes, if Terrell Owens got in the face of Andy Reid, it would have been a much bigger thing. And by the way, Terrell Owens was great when he played for the Eagles. Okay? Played for the Eagles. It was only after the Super Bowl when he blamed Donovan McNabb that a lot of his image changed. But T.O.'s been a pain in the ass his whole career. Right? His whole career. Tyreek Hill hasn't been a pain in the ass in terms of give me the ball. He does have some major off-the-field red flags. Who else are we talking about? Yeah, we made it a big deal into A.J. Brown. Like, we first couple times like, and then it kept happening. And now there's talk of moving off him if you're Philadelphia. And he was getting into it with his quarterback, who also, by the way, is black. So it's not about race. So I think eliminating the context of, like, it doesn't seem out of character for Travis Kelce to be fired up. It does seem out of character for him to be going at Andy Reid. And, oh, yeah, by the way, they won the game. If they lost the game, that would have been a much bigger storyline. That's the way it works. I'm not saying that there haven't been times in the last 40 years, which is modern sports history, where a black guy, black man, black woman has been accused of doing something that a white guy's done in sports, done the exact same thing to a white coach, to a white player, and we can be more harsh in our criticism. I think, I don't know this, I think, at least most people think like I am, it's about that guy. Right? It's about that guy. The perfect example is when the Johnny Manziel thing started to come apart in Cleveland. Okay? And you can go back and archive this thing all you want. Remember, Skip said he thinks Johnny's an alcoholic. I had said the exact same thing 2 weeks before on my CBS show. Same thing. And my logic behind it was, like, everyone says he's showing up late. He's not as engaged. And what do they say about it? There's a difference between drinking and having a drinking problem is it starts to affect your life, your work. Like, yeah, we got a problem. When he was going to start his first game, I remember watching the game. And the announcer was like, he showed up at 12 o'clock, and you see all these other guys are already out, warming up. And you're like, that's a problem. Because the narrative out of him in college was like, he didn't really study, didn't really work that hard. He just goes out and plays. You can't do that at that level. So Manziel was judged harshly. Why? Not because of the color of his skin, but because, like, of the acts of the past. So that's how I look at it. Buyer, how would you feel if it was anybody else? Like, what was your reaction to the Kelce thing to begin with?
Yeah, and I think I even said this on yesterday's show. I think this is a different story if this happens in college. Player is benched, player does not play. This is the National Football League. I think that there is a different distinction there. But in college, I don't care who you are. If anybody did that to a head coach, I don't think they'd be playing for the rest of the game. I don't think that happens. It also provides a learning experience, if you will, Doug. These are two adults who have worked together for the past decade, both wanting the same thing. And for Travis Kelce, quite honestly, I can understand why he probably wanted the football, because they weren't doing anything with it when he wasn't getting the football. I have no problem with it. Not 1 second in my mind did race play a role into this. The three of the examples that were used, as you laid out, Doug, were not good examples. To use Antonio Brown, to use Terrell Owens, to use A.J. Brown, who's been seen pouting time after time, after games when they win and he doesn't get the football, and then when they lose but he did get the football, he's smiling on the sidelines. Like, we know what the motivation is there. This is a Super Bowl. I do think if that was Tyreek Hill on the Kansas City Chiefs, it would have been the same exact reaction that Travis Kelce got.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the point you're about to make, I think, is like part of this is why Andy is great, because he doesn't let that stuff bother him. Right?
Yes, and that Tyreek Hill would have been there for a while in their system. It's not about getting the ball; it's about getting the ball to your best players. And if it isn't happening, you can understand the urgency of a Super Bowl. So I actually think, like, if it was Tyreek Hill doing the same thing, maybe he wouldn't have been able to bump Andy Reid and make him off balance, but I don't think that it's an issue. I think people were up in arms and seeing it anyway, but I don't see this as an issue of race at all. I just think of it veteran head coach, veteran player, and you don't see it very much on the sidelines, but I think it's a non-issue, especially with that team and that organization. If it was I don't know, let's just use the Chargers, for example, because of Brandon Staley's status, being up in the air. If a Chargers wide receiver came off and was like, get me the football, I think that would probably be a little bit more weird because it's not Andy Reid and it's not Travis Kelce or even Tyreek Hill in that matter.
You and I are kind of a lockstep in it, right? It's like we keep bringing up guys that I had who's this who tweeted me? Chris Davis says they made Latrell Sprewell pay. Like he choked his coach, right? Like if Travis Kelce choked Andy Reid, trust me, he would be out of the league right now, right?
I don't and I don't want to name names, but I'm gonna name a name, and I don't think it would be a difference because he's truly one of the best guys in the league. But if you just have someone who's not, well, I actually want to name a name, but if you have a guy who doesn't have the pass that you laid out, then they were just bad examples. And I actually think that the Tyreek Hill one is one where, we would let it slide. I just didn't think race played any role in it whatsoever.
Here's what. Let me just do this with Tyreek Hill, okay? And this is where I want, and you are not. So Dan, please don't think this. I get tired of people being so disingenuous. I think that there's a level of disingenuousness with this, where Tyreek Hill. Here's where how the NFL works, how professional sports work. It's your talent. Tyreek Hill, if we remember, okay, I know this because he won the Oklahoma game. He won Bedlam, and then he had the domestic violence charge where he hit his then girlfriend, now wife, and he got kicked out of school. He went to Alabama A&M, I think, right? Anyway, do we remember a couple years ago there was the audio conversation that was really uncomfortable of Tyreek Hill and, again, his now wife, then fiance, and some of the things he said? Why did that? There was no suspension. There was no punishment, no nothing. Why? Well, one, again, we didn't have context on a lot of things that he was saying. And two, most importantly, he hadn't violated any law, and so he's a great football player. He gets to play football, it had nothing to do with he's black or he's white or he's just great at football, and people have done anything in their power to allow him to have the opportunity to play football. Not because he's black or if he was because he's white, it's because he's a great football player. He actually gets a pass. He's got a pass on far more egregious stuff.
Sure.
I need to respond to that tweet real fast. You said it was Chris Davis. I wonder if it's the former first baseman for the Orioles or the former outfielder for the A's. But Chris Davis brings up a good example in these lines, right? Because I was thinking the exact same thing. And I think this is what Jared Bell is getting to, okay? If Chris Mullen would have choked out P.J. Carlesimo, would there have been the vitriol? Would there have been the level of hate and pressure to suspend and all this stuff? Would the degree of negativity been just as harsh? I don't know about that.
Okay. So,
I don't know.
So you're old enough. You remember when
absolutely
when Bill Laimbeer was with the Pistons and they were beating people. Bill Laimbeer was called a thug. He was called a thug. Not because he's white, not because no, because he was a thug. He just clubbed dudes when they come in the lane. That's it. It's weird. We've become way, way, way more sensitive towards stuff recently. We're told the racial bias stuff was way worse than it actually wasn't. Bill Laimbeer was a thug. We've made posse into a racially charged word. We've made this and look, at the end of the day, they won. But the biggest thing is he has equity. He has positive equity. Travis Kelce is a beloved dude who's won now 3 Super Bowls. At the time, he'd won 2 Super Bowls. He is the go-to guy. He is the only guy who's been dependable. And he had a rough season in the middle of the year as well. He did. He looked old. He looked tired. Bayer pointed out he shouldn't have gone to Argentina or wherever he went to go see a concert. He came back. He looked exhausted. He wasn't good for a good stretch of the season. But, he came through in the AFC Championship game. He comes through all the time. He's the guy. But more than anything, he's got positive equity. No one has anything bad to say about Travis Kelce. And all of those guys that were pointed out, people do. Not because they're black, because they've earned that reputation. Earned it. Right? Earned it. So, Dan, I think we're in lockstep. And Jason, I think you are too.
No. My point is this, and we can end it at that. But I don't know if Chris Mullin did what Charles Spiegel did. I don't think there would have been the degree of kind of criticism and negativity. I think it would have been made into a big deal, absolutely. But I think what Jared Bell is getting to is the degree of how we're talking about it. How we're, this is just kind of easily dismissed between a couple of friends.
I think it's because they won and it was early in the game.
Oh, if they would have lost, we would have said that was an example of the undoing of the Chiefs.
Correct. They're coming apart at the seams. Yes. Confirmation bias, if you will. By the way, here's Tom Brady. He's been through some sideline kerfuffles before, talking about that interaction.
There's always little family issues. And, I of course, I don't mind seeing it, because I was a part of a lot of those things. You're thinking emotions are so high. You are definitely not centered and balanced. You're not in a meditative state at that point. You are fully determined to go after and to win. So I think a lot of the things that are said during the games, people should just let them fly off their back. And I actually think Coach Reid handled it just awesome like he always does, because he just said, I was a little off balance, and, Travis is such a competitor, and I love that because it just speaks to, his leadership ability, because some coaches get so sensitive and, oh, you embarrassed me. And it speaks to the self-confidence that Coach Reid has in himself too, because he doesn't take that personally at all. He doesn't look at that and feel like someone offended him, or he takes it for what it is and doesn't make it more than it is, and doesn't see like someone's trying to belittle him. Travis is not trying to do any of those things. He's just trying to be fired up and stay in the moment. And
I agree. It's great points made by the most successful quarterback of all time. There's also there's a video. Do you guys follow John Boy?
Yeah, it's a good follow.
Yeah, have you seen his recent one on the Super Bowl?
No.
Yeah, he did a really good one on the Super Bowl, and it's Rice and Mahomes are screaming at each other. The last play before the field goal in regulation, he missed. Rice was open, and he missed him, and he he threw the ball away, and then they kicked the field goal, and it goes to them on the sidelines, and Rice is complaining about, I was open, and Mahomes told him like the snap was in the ground, and he used some colorful language. And then, by the way, Mahomes got him the ball the very first play of the next drive, right? This is all part of the interaction, what goes on the sidelines. Guys, leave me in the game, give me the ball. What do you do? Like, that's it. But again, your ability to say it and get away with it comes from the equity you have.